can't film, it's going to be much harder. Right.
We'll take the shot. Let's go!
I'll even let you through. Oh, let's go!
Oh my god! Yo, I hit the lottery. Look.
Oh, keep going. Keep gambling. Keep gambling.
It's. Oh! Yo!
I doubt we get anything out of this. Oh, never mind. Kyle, you fucking lucky bastard. Oh my god. The second you say that.
Oh my god, he's right there.
Oh my god. Oh, headshot! And I got him, baby! Dude, that was so sick!
Look at him go. Look at him go. He shot them inside their zone. No way.
Look at that! Oh my god, dude! Fuck!
When Voxiom.io was released back on September 10, 2020, the potential outcome for what had been created was completely unspecified. A new free game in the IO community? I mean, come on, there was already numerous other games, and this game was completely available for anyone to play. How good could it possibly be? Well, some of these aspects that were considered negatives in the beginning would go on to make the game one of the most well-known games in the IO community. However, things started to go wrong around the start of 2022. No updates being made and mass complaints from the community began to roll in. Hackers began to completely overtake the normal skill level of a player that made the game so fun in the first place. Useless anti-cheat updates, crate rotations, skins, and a bunch of brainless updates has caused the game to slowly lose its popularity since its peak in April 2022. But was it just the lack of updates? Or was it the fact that people just lost interest in the game over time? Buckle up, everyone, as we cover the rise and fall of Voxiom.io. I want you to cast your mind back to late 2020. Where were you? For some of you, it might feel like a long time ago in a place far from where you are now, and for some others listening, it might feel like just yesterday. Well, for a team of just one developer, late 2020 is what we might call the start of the golden era, because on September 10th, 2020, a project that had been in development for about 6 months was ready to be released to the general public. This special project was now called Voxiom.io. The developer Thriver wanted to create a game that combined the construction game genre with the first-person shooter gaming genre to create something with a mix of Fortnite, Minecraft, Call of Duty, and Counter-Strike, and boom, Voxiom basically had all of those games combined into one. Voxiom had gained a decent amount of attention in all social media platforms after its release in September 2020. The game's concept at the time was fairly simple. 100 players drop into an island, find weapons, and the last player alive is the winner. The gameplay style was extraordinarily competitive and fun and was used by other massive games like Fortnite, PUBG, and some other games.
My first place. Yes! Let's go! Let's go! Yes! Yes!
The fact that everyone was on a similar skill level at the start meant everyone had an equal chance of winning, and the possibility that the next match you play could be your first ever Battle Royale win. This competitive aspect caused players to play over and over and over to try to get at least one win, and by the time you did win, it was over, you're addicted to the game. The addictive nature of the game was incomparable to any other IO game available. However, there was a bit of a problem with Voxiom.io. There needed to be more of a PvP aspect to the game. Sure, fighting against other players was kind of fun, but the game lacked a gripping competitive aspect. The developers realized that the player base wanted another game mode into the mix, one which maybe was more competitive compared to Battle Royale. Then, on October 22, 2020, a game mode which would become the most popular game modes to play in Voxiom.io was released, Voxiom Capture the Gems. Many huge content creators at the time then began to stream or make videos about the game of how fun it was to play, with people such as Trinkunity,
How does that work?
Boskid Gaming, Spanty, Manny V2,
One more, they need one more kill. Oh, we just won it. No freaking way.
and Brazilian switching their focus to Voxiom and making videos out of it. Then these content creators began to experiment with crazy ideas, such as this one, for example. More players began to play Capture the Gems and began to invite their friends to play with each other, multiplying the player account and causing an extreme exponential growth. It was likely around this point where Thriver realized that perhaps rather than just focusing on the Battle Royale game mode, he should just focus on Capture the Gems and make it their primary development focus. By the end of December 2020, only 3 months after the initial release of the game, Voxiom had added numerous items like the Surge, the CSMG, and the Magnum pistol, with other features added in-game like a new Battle Royale map. At around January 2021 to April 2021, most players which played during this timeline would say that it was the golden era of Voxiom.io. Why? Well, it's most likely cause of the fact that Sandbox mode was added and players were just having fun building bases with other players and hoping to not get raided. I honestly remember having this experience at one point. I would play around in Sandbox servers and I would just make bases for fun with other players. Pretty much after Sandbox got released, almost everyone was playing it non-stop. Literally everyone was enjoying it. I feel like whenever you'd hop in Sandbox, there was always some crazy event happening. I remember whenever some huge player was in the same server as you, pretty much everyone was focused on them more than anything else. Then a few weeks later, and on February 20th, 2021, Free For All was released. Free For All was added as an experimental game mode, which players used to get a bit more skilled at the game. By March 2021, only 6 months after the game's release, Voxiom had reached 1 million plays on Crazy Games. And it's not like the record stopped there, because a few days later, an event would take place that would break the record for the most views in a single stream on Twitch, JW Berry playing Voxiom.io, with 110 concurrent viewers.
Hang on to life, just let me get this point. Thank you. 100 to 100? Whoa! 100 to 100! Did that ever happen before? Can we clip this moment?
By April 2021, Voxiom decided to add a few game changer items into the game, this being mythic weapons and underground dungeons. And right after they were added, players decided to kind of exploit a way of getting dungeons by simply X-raying. By the end of May 2021, Voxiom had introduced a new map to capture the gems called Oasis, which meant that there were shield potions inside the buildings, in the middle and in the corners of the map. This was the first and last time Voxiom had introduced this in a Capture the Gems map. As soon as it was implemented in-game, it was removed in a couple of weeks since it was considered very unfair and unbalanced. Instead, they were replaced with berries. Late May wasn't much different to the previous month. However, Voxiom introduced a load and shop where players could open crates with Vox gems. The first example of Voxiom using an in-game currency, which you could buy in the Voxiom shop and try your luck out in-game and try to get some rare gun skins. As soon as the summer of 2021 hit, Voxiom had decided to finally fill up dungeons with dirt blocks due to the X-ray glitches that were occurring at the time, which the player base was not happy about it. Following this, Voxiom decided to slow down with the updates. Instead, they decided to just release huge updates which changed the game forever, like, for example, water physics, water buckets, and the addition of bombs, which was experimented excessively and was used in many videos. By September 2021, Voxiom implemented new gun models and settings into the game and a new CTG map called Bulwark. But most importantly, the addition of Player Market. The Player Market system was a system where players could list skins, sell them, collect them, or have them just to show off, and maybe try your luck out in game and try to get some rare skin. This also kept the player base more engaged to get a set of skins that they want, and there was no barrier from getting any Vox gems in the first place, which the player base liked. These skins would later become rare, which is insignificant now, but will be later mentioned in later parts of the video. By late 2021, Voxiom had released many major updates like, for example, marketing, friends, and a few small updates such as in-game trophies and gun skins.
Oh my god. The second you say that.
But one major update which happened during this timeline were the addition of in-game clans. Ever since the addition of clans, it started to make players become a bit more skilled. Most likely the fact that some top clans at the time were placing certain requirements to get in the clan. When December 2021 arrived, Voxiom decided to temporarily release two different skins for Christmas during the holidays, this being both Cozy and Frosty skins. And it wasn't just that. Voxiom decided to host a tournament where players could participate in a chance to win a full set of Christmas skins. But it wasn't just an in-game grinding tournament. There was also an art competition, which brought a lot of ideas and a lot of pretty cool concepts to the community to take a look at, and a building competition, which really brought a bit more of ideas into the mix. This was the one and only event which Voxiom hosted, and it might have honestly been forgotten very quickly over time. All of the drama and clan wars is what really made Voxiom much fun. And by this point, people had really started to take advantage of the build mechanic as a proper strategy to fight players and to stay alive much longer. The building mechanic took the game from a mediocre first-person shooter in 2021 to a game with a genius way of protecting yourself. On top of this, the game was pretty addicting.
Oh my god! Yo, I hit the lottery, look! Oh my god.
It was just the non-stop action and players could not get enough. It didn't seem like anything could possibly go wrong with Voxiom. The game was doing fantastic at the time. What could possibly bring such a game undone? Well, by the start of 2022, only a few weeks after clans got added, there was a little bit of a trend going on around the community. This being hackers.
Okay, I gotta actually kill. Dude, this is my... Dude, you see what I'm looking at? You guys see him, right? He's hacking the game.
Around this timeline, hackers using cheats like speed hacks or aimbot with ESP started to become more common. Then, as time went on, that hacking trend began to appear slowly and capture the gems. Everyone started to notice. It seemed as though after the trend of hacks, the skill level also increased, It seemed that the skill that was achieved in 3 months previously could only be reached in only 2 weeks by simply practicing in-game. Like for example, free-for-all. After the player base's skill level and the use of hacks increased, it kinda made the new players have a terrible experience while playing the game. It was difficult for new players to get a grip on the game because the beginner's skill level was diminished following the trend of speed hacks. Now it's hard to quantify whether or not players left the game following the trend of hacks, the risen skill level, or it was the lack of updates which made the gameplay feel too repetitive. But I think we can all agree, if you can reach almost peak skill level in 2 to 3 weeks instead of 3 months, and everyone on the game is skilled, putting a barrier for new players, it's going to affect the health of the game in one way over the long term. So what was it that followed this? The developer noticed the fact that hacks, lag machines, the repetitive gameplay, and the lack of updates was kinda causing the game to lose popularity by the time April 2022 rolled around, just after hacks became a usual thing to cross by. It started to just kill the game all of a sudden, but at the same time, it seemed that around the spring of 2022, Voxiom had reached its peak, popularity-wise. But the negative feedback the player base was giving in 2022 compared to 2021 was almost impossible to compare, because how is a potential new player going to win against 50 other experienced players or hackers when they have no in-game experience themselves? They had to change something to give new players a shot, and by this point, since there were no updates, the player base was starting to get bored and players started leaving one by one. The developer realized this and started to act quickly by announcing a new weapon on May 24, 2022, which had been in development for some time, which unsurprisingly got the community excited about it. A few months went by after 6 months of waiting, and on June 29, 2022, the developer decided to update the game by adding new gun skins into the game and new anti-cheat, but most importantly, custom servers. The addition of custom servers brought a whole wave of new ideas and concepts to the community, since it was a game mode where players can invite friends or just play by themselves and create some cool structures in-game for fun, host tournaments with other players from the community, or to just help players improve their skills. As soon as the game mode was released, it kinda brought some hope for the game to come back, but just after 1 week custom servers were released, the player base was already bored and wanted more updates. But one of the updates which I didn't mention was the removal of water buckets in-game. Around the spring of 2022, players decided to play around with lag machines in survival mode, which was made specifically with water and water buckets, and that caused a lot of chaos. Then a couple of weeks after water buckets were removed and custom servers were released, on August 29, 2022, Voxiom had decided to officially patch speed hacks, being one of the main reasons why people were leaving the game in the first place. But the speed hacking part was just the beginning of what was to occur after. At this rate, the community was enjoying the updates. What could possibly bring such a perfect run undone? The aimbot hacks quite possibly agreed to be the worst and most game-changing hack to ever be made in Voxiom, since the hacks could basically rip through enemy builds with 0 skill level. Around October 2022, it seemed as the updates were going to keep on coming, but surprisingly, nothing happened. It was around this moment where the developer just disappeared completely, and by this point, Voxiom's massive player base was completely abandoned.
Yo, he's in front of you, shoot! You're kidding me. You're kidding me, bro. You're off.
Voxiom 2023, quite possibly to be, if not the worst year the game has had so far in its history. Massive complaints about players hacking, which the newbies were complaining as much as the pro players were, and on top of that, the fact that there were no updates being made is what caused the gameplay to feel very repetitive. Pretty much whenever you would search up voxiom.io on YouTube, the main videos that would pop up first would be hacking videos, which pretty much just summed up the game's situation back then. And by this point, the player base was getting sick of the game, and as time went on, more players started to leave. But something that the developer said a few months after he left was this message: "I have big plans for Voxiom, but it's taking a lot longer than I originally expected." A message sent on December 26, 2022. Perhaps the developers' plans are just taking a while to work. Then as time went on, it seemed to become trendy to start hating the developer and complaining about Voxiom. Over a 6-month period between January 2022 and July 2022, everyone went from thinking that it was the greatest IO game ever created to a game doomed and destined for failure. Looking back, perhaps a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now if we look at the Google Trends graph of Voxiom, the weekend where custom servers were released to the game was when it was at its peak, with a slow decline right following. And as we can observe from the graph, the custom servers update was really only the beginning of the decline. After months of silence, the community was desperate for something, anything to revitalize the game. Then, on July 27, 2023, an update finally dropped. Excitement surged, only for players to discover it was just another anti-cheat patch and a crate rotation. No new content, no fresh mechanics, just more of the same. At this point, the player base realized perhaps the developer had abandoned the game completely. A few months went by, however, Voxiom still hadn't returned to its former glory, and by the end of September 2023, the aimbot situation only got worse. The previously discussed hacking problem that was seeing many players leave the game was getting patched to some extent with updates in the background. Aimbot users appeared to be one of those users, which sparked pure outrage from the community and flattened the skill gap.
What? Just clip it, clip it, clip it.
But simple as it is, if you are an aimbot user, then you are unstoppable. If you are a skilled player, then you will have a tough time fighting against them. The popularity of Voxiom in 2023 peaked around April 2023, however died down to the lowest point that Voxiom had been since its release. But the developers weren't stupid. With the developer rarely communicating, only sending messages every few months, the game's direction felt uncertain. They were implementing anti-cheats just behind the scenes. They could see that the game was dying. There was only so many months or years where players finally realized, holy crap, I've been playing this game for 3 years. Maybe it's time to find something new. They could see that since 2022, more players were leaving, so they needed to refresh and revitalize the game. On the 9th of December at the end of 2023, Voxiom finally updated the game and introduced the new Elite Assault Rifle. The same weapon, which was announced on May 24, 2022, was now released in December 2023, and this weapon was absolute carnage. The Elite Assault Rifle, a weapon that completely overthrew all of the rules out the window, altering not only the gameplay but all of the pro player's skill. However, there was something else that occurred in this update which brought back a rare skin that made some people actually play Voxiom again. During winter 2023, Voxiom decided to release the old Cozy and Frosty skins, 2 skins that were available only to the December 2021 players. Everyone, especially the market players, seemed kinda happy to have the opportunity to purchase these skins. The market players were absolutely loving the update. However, the reintroduction of rare skins was nothing compared to what Voxiom would do to revive the game a bit in the next following update. The return of the OG Voxiom Battle Royale map quite possibly might have been the greatest decision that some might argue that the developer has taken since the addition of custom servers back in June 2022, or even the addition of clans in December 2021. The community was kinda requesting the developer to add the old Battle Royale map, and when the map made its return, there was absolutely no one which complained about it. Everyone was enjoying the update. Voxiom also added a brand new CTG map called Inferno, which included lava in it, which was pretty surprising since absolutely no one was expecting lava to get added or a new CTG map to be released. Actually, most of the player base was hoping that a new free-for-all map would get added, but unfortunately that did not happen. It seemed as though Voxiom actually had risen back from the dead, actually looking like it was rising up. However, I'd say that this was due to a mass number of people googling the possibility of the game getting an update, or even an anti-cheat against hackers. When everything is going fine in the game, there's not really much reason to search for Voxiom. Actually, as soon as the developers updated the game, pretty much all hacking scripts got patched. At one point for a good month, there were literally no hackers whenever you'd play Capture the Gems. These updates seemed to provide mass traffic for the game throughout 2024. Then through February and April, Voxiom decided to implement mobile controls, new UI, as well as animated vector space skins and more crate rotations, with some people saying that the updates were a bit of a letdown, but the main complaint was focused on the fact that soldiers were allowed to play in survival. Ever since soldiers were allowed to play in survival, there have been many issues since soldiers were allowed to play survival. Why? The soldier hacking problem. Whenever you would play survival mode, at one point or another, you would eventually have to face a hacker in survival. After some soldier gets a mythic sniper or a mythic elite assault rifle while using aimbot and the SP, you might as well should just quit the game entirely. What made it even worse was the fact that you really couldn't report a soldier hacking, since soldiers were players which were playing the game logged out, and the only possible way to get rid of them in game is if a mod kicks them out. This update also saw the nerf of the heavy sniper rifle, an update designed to reduce the strength of the heavy sniper meta. Then around May 2024, it seemed that the updates were going to keep on coming, but all of a sudden, the developer officially announced that he was working on a new game. That new game at the time was called Voxbound.io, now called CubeRealm.io. Now some of you might be wondering, but why are you mentioning Cuberium? Well, CubeRealm.io is honestly one of the few reasons Voxiom.io has fallen off. Since the game looked fun and it just appealed more to people, which made the developer really put all of his thoughts into Cuberium instead of Voxiom. Then as soon as the summer of 2024 came by, Voxiom had only gotten just one update, which was the implementation of the Voxiom clan leaderboards, an implementation which was thought it would happen about 2 years ago, was now implemented in-game. It seemed as soon as Clan Wars Phase 2 was implemented, it started to do weird things to the clan system. It seemed that if you were a player with a high quantity of stats, then pretty much anyone would want you to be in their clan, even if you had terrible stats. It kinda started to change the requirements of joining a clan, maybe because of the fact that the clan leaderboard was based off of stats over the overall skill level of a player. The new update also had brought community skins into the game, something which the community was highly requesting for a long time since the addition of Voxiom Studios back in March 2021, and the community was absolutely enjoying the new skins, with some skins or sprays which were dedicated or made by a few players, like this spray for example. Then weeks went by, and the player base was expecting for there to be at least one update for Voxiom. But something insane happened. On July 12, 2024, a YouTuber by the name of Phoenix decided to make a video on CubeRealm.io, and it brought a ton of players. The amount of attention this one YouTuber had given in the span of just 4 days was equivalent to Voxiom's player base in 4 years. After that, the developer really placed all of the effort on Cuberium instead of Voxiom. Then the community was really worried about the future of Voxiom. CubeRealm.io just kept on getting updates, meanwhile Voxiom wasn't. After the summer of 2024 had ended, the developer disappeared again on September 3, 2024. It seems that every year since September 2022, the developer just disappears all of a sudden. Oh baby! It seemed around this timeline, a new hack started to rise. A hack which, if it ever gets released to the public, has potential to completely destroy the game. Fast forward a couple of months later, now in 2025, and nothing much has happened in the community. Looking at the graph, the game seems to be on another downward trend, a trend that may certainly continue in the future. So it creates the closing argument for the video: what caused the gradual decline of Voxiom over time? Well, from everything presented and by analyzing the opinion of the public, it seems to be a mix of arguments of the game in general and just the loss of interest over time from the player base. There's only so many new maps, new gun skins, new leaderboards, or new weapons that you can implement before people realize, hey, it's pretty much the same as it was since it was first released. And this is just the typical path for almost every game. Sure, it's easy to blame the lack of updates, but at the end of the day, there's only so long that someone can play a game before it begins to fall off. It's been already 4 years and 5 months since the game was released, and to think that the people interested back in 2020 are the same people interested now is unlikely. But I think that one of the main reasons the game fell off was due to the amount of hackers that were in the game. Now here are my thoughts. What could have the developers done? Well, it's hard to say, but I feel like after September 2022, It could have been a perfect time where the developer could have updated the game. The community was still alive, almost everyone was contributing to the game. I feel like it could have been fair if there was at least one update per month. I feel like if there were more updates in 2022, it could have potentially been better than Voxiom in 2021. The reason those first 12 to 18 months was so fun was because there weren't any hackers in every match you'd play on, and cause the game was having consistent updates, which just meant that the player base was going to be consistently playing all the time. Then suddenly, when 2022 came around, hackers just popped out of nowhere. You'd have to be extremely lucky to not be in a match with another player using hacks. Then as time went on, those hackers pretty much ruined the game and made the game instantly less enjoyable, and then when the developer came back to make updates, it seemed that everyone was playing the game like usual. Then as soon as the developer switched his focus to Cubarium, the game seemed like it was going to start to fall apart soon. It's honestly incredible to think that a game which in the span of 1 year was peaking around October 2021 would then fall off as soon as October 2022 arrived. Looking at the updates that were occurring in 2021, it was almost impossible to think that the game would fall off in just 1 year. And to think that the game will come back to its peak back in 2021 is very unlikely looking at the situation the game is in right now. Now, how long do I think this game will last? Honestly, looking at the game and how active the community is, I honestly think that this game will most likely die by the summer of 2025 or as soon as 2026 hits, if no updates are being made. Regardless, the community has provided so many people with so much entertainment, a lot of drama, and good times up until this point. If there was a way to relive all of those moments in the past for years, then I would 100% love to relive them again. So despite having a decline in popularity, it still appears to be an excellent game to jump into. Why not give it a shot?